Hello everyone. So in today video we are going to discuss about ref out and in keyword in C sharp. Okay. So basically of course these are the keywords and we will understand how exactly we can make use of ref out and in. Okay. So ref and out both are used to pass by reference to a method. By default, a reference type passed into a method will have any changes made to its value reflected outside the method as well. So if we are making any changes locally to any other method, it will start reflecting outside as well. Let's go and try to understand. Let's flip to Visual Studio, and here if you see, I have already written the code. So basically from main method I am calling the demo method. Okay, so main method is calling a demo, hence we can say main method is the caller method and demo is the callee method. Then if you see here, we have initialized the number to 5 and then we are passing the reference, we are using the ref. So typically if we are not using this, then it is the traditional approach that we are using to pass the input parameter to another method. So whatever we will pass, that value we will get here. Okay, so of course it will print number here as a 5, and then if we modified number equal to 10, so this change will remain local only because here we are not using any keyword like ref and out. So if we go and here outside, if we print the value, we will get the num as 5. Okay, so this is the preferred approach that we have been using. So obviously here the value will remain 5. We are making change to this local which is 10, but it will be reflecting only to those locals, a method, but not outside this method. So here again it will be 5 only. So the output will be 5 and then here also 5. So 2 times 5 it will print. Let's go and let's check the output. So we are getting 5 which is expected. Now if we pass the ref, if we are using a ref, so ref basically is used with the input parameters only. Here also we will be required to use, and now what will happen this time when we are using the ref, it means we are passing the value as well as a reference of this value num. Okay, so both things we are passing which will be copied to this number and printing this. So of course it will print 5 and then we are making change to this number. Okay, and now since this one is also pointing to this num only, reference, basically it is reference as well as value. So both we are passing, so we are changing the value at this reference, so which is basically this time you can assume this number and num both are pointing to the same location of the memory. Okay, so this 5 will be overwritten with this 10, and then when you will exit this, the whatever this num was pointing to, that value at that location has been changed and it becomes 10. Okay, so now when we will be accessing the same reference from here, of course the value will be 10. This is what the meaning of this line was. Like by default a reference type passed into a method will have any changes. Of course we are making changes here, and then it is saying made to its value reflected outside the method as well. So from this method we are making the change and it will start reflecting to caller method as well. Let's simply run, and then here it will print the 5, but here modification happens and hence here it will be 10. So first will be 5 and then 10. Let's go and let's cross check, and you can see the value has been changed. So this 10 basically we are printing from the main method, this one. Till here we didn't modify, that's why it was printing 5 here, but here before accessing this one the modification happened in this method, and that's why at this point the value became 10 which we did here, and so it started reflecting. So this is the point that we need to keep in mind, that whenever we are making any change using a ref, in that case it start reflecting outside the method as well. Let's go to the next point, that is ref is used to state that the parameter passed may be modified by the method. So it is telling, like, we might modify the value or we might not. It is not mandatory that we must modify the value of ref or the variable. We want, then we can modify. If we don't want, simply we can't modify. So in this line, basically maybe is very crucial, is important. Like, we might be modifying or we might not be modifying. It depends on our requirement or on our logic. Okay, so even though we are not modifying, in that case, of course, the change we will not be able to see in our caller method. Okay, so this time here also it will print 5 and here also it will print 5. So it's up to us whether we want to modify it or not. Okay, if you will modify, then obviously you will start getting the change in the caller method as well. I hope this point is clear. Next is out is used to state that the parameter passed must be modified by the method. This is something which is talking about the out keyword. So let's switch to the out, and then we will see what is happening. So this time it is saying it must be modified. In case of rep, it was telling based on our requirement we can modify or we not, but in this it is asking we must be modifying. So I will do, I will change this ref to out, and then here also I will make this out. So by reading this we will get to know the difference between ref and out here as well, because so far what we saw, like ref and out both are used to pass by reference to a method. So both are passed by reference, then what is the difference between them? So difference is, now we can see, like, see, when we are passing by out we started getting error. However, the same piece of code was working fine in case of ref. So let's go and see what is the error. So if you see, it's saying the out parameter number must be assigned to before control leaves the current method. So here whatever the value we are passing from here, that will come here. Okay, but we will not be able to consume that value or utilize that value. Still we must be required to initialize that value first, then only we can use. Okay, you see, without initializing this we are trying to access. So the value of this num, that is 5, will be coming here, we can see, but we can't use here. If I copy and I kept the breakpoint. Okay, so there is some error. What I can do, yeah, so as long as we don't fix this error, it will not allow me to run this. So let me go and assign me some value, maybe number is equal to 10. Now error gone. So let's try to run this and then see what happens. So if you see the number that we passed, so number is 5. Okay, but we were not able to use that, and then as soon as we modify this to 10, now the value will be printed to 10. So the difference is, in case of ref, the ref and value both we were passing, but in case of out only reference was passing. But you can consider ki value is still getting passed, but we are not able to use that value. We were forced to initialize the value first and then utilize this. As you see, when, as long as I didn't do this change, by that time I was getting the compile time error. So compiler will force you to initialize the value without keyword, otherwise you will not be able to go further. So now here I have made this, and then here of course it will print 10, and then the further things are same that we had in the ref, that is whatever the change we have made here, of course we will be getting outside the method as well. So here also the num will, earlier was 5, inside this method it got modified. Means, remember guys, in case of out keyword we must modify the value. Okay, and so we modified this and then it got changed. Now this number is having 10, and here also basically this num and this number was pointing to the same address of the memory location. So using this reference, basically the value got changed, and at same location this num is also pointing, hence here also the value will be 10. So if we go, you see the num is here also, it is 10, and in the output console window if you see, so there also we are getting 10 and 10. Okay, so this is what the difference between ref and out is. means in ref we were not forced to initialize this, but in case of out we were forced. The next thing is कि even though in case of out we don't initialize, we are not getting any error and still it will work fine, right? Like see, this number we are not initialized, here we are initializing, it will print 10 and 10 here. If I simply run, I will not put breakpoint, so we will get 10 and 10 still. Means whether you are initializing or not, in case of out it will work fine. But if I revert it back to ref, in that case here you will see I will start getting error. What is this? It says use of unassigned local variable num. Means if you are using this with the ref, then before making use of this variable you must initialize this, because remember what I told about ref, when you are passing any variable as ref, it means you are passing two things. What are those? The first one is the reference of this variable and second one is the value, but you didn't assign the value, that's why it is giving error. If you assign any value, maybe 90, see, error gone. Okay, so both thing you are passing, but in case of out you are only passing the reference, you are not passing the value, hence it is not bothered about the value, and so even though you are assigning or not, it will not care about that and it will work fine. So this is the difference. Like in out you don't need to initialize, even though you initialize, that is fine, but you will not be able to use that from the calling method. Okay, but in the calling method you must need to initialize. Okay, here in the calling method you must initialize in case of out, but the reverse of this one in ref is you must initialize here, and you want or you don't want from the callee, that is up to you, we are not forced. So here even we commented, we were not getting any error. Okay, so I hope you are clear with out and ref. Next one is in. In is used to state that the parameter passed cannot be modified. Now remember these 3 point one by one. Okay, so in case of ref, when we pass the ref, that time it was up to us whether we want to modify or we don't want to modify. If we want to modify, we can modify from the callee method. This demo is being called, hence this is called callee method, and this main method is calling this demo method, that's why main method become the caller, this one become the callee method. So this, from this callee method, if you are passing as a ref, then it is optional. You want to modify, you can modify, you don't want to modify, you don't modify. But in case of out, you see, we must modify. If we comment this, in that case we start getting error, so you must need to modify. Now in case of in, okay, so in is actually similar like ref. Okay, so what was that? In ref we were passing both, what was that? The reference as well as value. So likewise in, so let me make it 5 and then I will say in. So let's see, if I don't initialize, then what will happen? Okay, so I will say num and then here I will say in again. So you see, when I say in that case this num is saying use of unassigned local value, means we must need to assign the value. It is similar like reference only, where we will be required to assign the value before passing this. And here in from the callee method, it was optional to modify that in case of ref, but in case of in keyword, what is this? You are passing this, but the problem is still this time, in case of reference you were able to modify. If you don't want, you don't modify, but here mandatorily you should not be able to modify this time. If you will modify, you will getting the error. Okay, so this is just opposite of out. Also you can say, in case of out you must modify this, but in case of in you must not modify this. Okay, this is similar like it is something which is you are getting the permission to have read only access. You will never be able to change or modify this. Okay, so you can only read this, and then now see, here we are passing the 5, so this one will print here as well as here, the same value will be printed. Simply if I run, you can see at both places you will get the 5. Okay, So in is nothing like, you can also assume it's like a constant kind of thing where you only have the read only access, you will not be able to modify. In case of out, you must modify. In case of ref, you modify or you don't modify, it's up to you. Okay, so I hope in is also clear. Now both the ref and in require the parameter to have been initialized before being passed to a method, and that we saw, right? In case of in also we were required to initialize, and if you remember, in case of ref also we were mandatorily required to initialize the value. This is what basically it is telling. The out keyword does not require this and is typically not initialized prior to being used in a method. So if we are using this, okay, let me write again out and then here out. So of course from the callee it will mandatorily ask you to initialize, so I initialize. But you remember here it is saying ki, here, so in case of out does not require this and is typically not initial, typically not mandatorily. So even though we initialize it, we will not be getting error, but definitely this value we will not be able to consume from this callee method. As you saw, right, we are not able to use this value as long as if we stop modifying this value, because compiler is not allowing to do so. So if we are not able to use this, then what is the point to initializing this, right? That's why it is telling that typically we don't initialize, because anyway we are not going to make use of this value. So this is the reason that it is telling that typically we don't initialize prior to being used in a method. Then next point is, a method cannot have both ref and out keyword with the same name in its signature. Okay, so here if you see, I cannot have something like ref int and then number, another one, because you see this is something like which we already know, and this is like a traditional approach also, whether we are using the ref or don't. So it the error it is saying the parameter name number is duplicate. So this is even common, like if you don't use ref or any keyword, still you will get error, because in the input parameter we must have unique name, right? So this is something which we already know, and this is something which has nothing to do with this keyword. Okay, of course their name should be unique. This is what basically this point is telling. Now the next point is, it is telling typically out is used to return multiple values from a method. What does it mean? Okay, so let me take one example. I will create one another method, okay, and then I will say like this, a static, let me modify this method only. I will say add or say calculation, okay, and then I will have maybe number 1 or 2, like this, unique. Okay, and then what I will do, I will perform addition. Some, I will have to return a value. So typically I can return only one value, maybe int. Okay, and then if I say I addition, then I can say return like this, number 1 plus number 2. So this time we are performing the addition, and then here let's not put this. I will store it inside a variable called int sum equal to demo, and then number 1 comma number 2, and then here I will initialize it with 10 comma number 2 set to 20. Okay, and then the name of the method is changed, so it is no longer demo. Now if we print here sum, what will happen? We are able to print the value 10 plus 20, that is 30. So we will get value 30. But the problem is we are able to get only one value as return type. Or what? I want multiplication, division, all things I want to perform on this number. So what I can do? Simply you remember the out, where we suppose this method will execute, then only it will do the calculations. Before that we don't have the value, right? So what we can do, simply here we can write something like int sum comma subtract comma multiply comma division, like this, divi division. So these many variable we have, and you remember in case of out we are not required to initialize them. So simply what we can do, let me not receive this from here. Okay, we can although receive, but let's reduce the complexity. And now what we can do basically, and then we can simply pass to calculation, okay, with out. Okay, so this one will be the normal value that we are passing, and then you anyway know, like without we cannot pass the value, we only pass the reference. So let's pass the reference of these values. So simply I will say out sum comma out subtract comma out multiply comma out division. Okay, so these many variable we are passing, and from this method simply what we can do, we can say okay, here also we need to increase the parameter, like okay, let me copy from here, I will paste, and simply need to push. Let's first now I will put all of them as integer type, int, data type you can take as per your choice. And then what I can say, I don't need to return this time. Okay, so instead of this, let's make it void. Okay, you can keep int here also, but you have to write the return statement, but I don't want to return. So simply the error we are getting, say the out parameter sum must be assigned. Yeah, so of course it is telling assign, and you know what we can assign, we can say sum equal to number 1 plus number 2, right? Subtract equal to actually number 2 minus number 1, right? So number 2 minus number 1. Likewise, sum, subtract, then multiply number 2 into number 1, and then division equal to number 2 upon number 1. Now all these value, whatever the change we are making here, you will be able to see these changes obviously in the column. So here now if you print the sum, subtract, all values you will get. Okay, so sum, subtract, multiply, and then division, so all value you will be able to see here. This multiply and division. Okay, so the value will be 30, then 10, then 200, and then 2. Okay, so you see this time we are, earlier while we using here as an integer type, we were able to pass only one value, only one, that is sum, subtract, division, or multiple. Only one value you can return, but now from here we are able to modify the entire value, or able to return multiple values, right? So this sum got returned, this subtract, multiple, all values we are getting the modified and able to receive the new value with the help of out keyword. So this is what basically it was telling here, like typically out is used to return multiple values. We are returning these values, right? Sum, subtract, multiple, division, we are setting the values and returning from callee to this caller, and then caller is able to consume this. Let's run and check the output. So you see the value is 30, 10, multiply is 200, division is 2. Okay, so this is what basically the meaning of that line was. And the last one was an out parameter needs not be initialized. Okay, it is telling, like you see we are not initializing, although we have already discussed that even if we initialize some value, maybe 3, then it will not give error. Okay, but typically we don't initialize, because the value that we passed here, that value anyway we are not going to use this one, because compiler will not allow you to use this, because whenever you are passing with the out, we are able to pass only one thing, that is reference, but not the value. And that's why if we are not able to pass the value, then what is the point to assign the value, right? So anyway we are passing the reference only, and that's why typically we don't initialize. Okay, even though we initialize, we can't track the value inside the callee method. Means we can't track, or you can say we can't use that one from the callee method, and that is the reason that typically in case of out, we don't assign the value from the caller, but we must assign in the callee method. Okay, so I hope you have now clarity between these keywords, that what is the ref keyword, what is out, and what is in. When you make in, then it is read only access we are getting in the callee method. When we are using out, we must modify the parameter, and when we are using ref, it means we want, then we can, or otherwise no need to modify that. So that's it for the ref out and in. I hope now it is clear. Thank you.